All right, guys, today what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at an escape from a ground fighting position, a common position, side control. We're going to look at what is commonly done in this position to escape, and then we're going to look at it through the lens of the CTAC system. One thing we take into consideration is that we don't want to necessarily grapple to re-engage and grapple. And sometimes grappling systems will lean toward this. Now, it's great training. I do it myself quite often. But if I am in a fighting situation, a self-defense situation, I may not necessarily want to do this. And one of the reasons I may want to avoid it is because I may have a weapon system on. So I may want to have the mindset of grappling to fight. So once I get to the position where I have some space and time, I may want to switch to more ballistic options, or I may want to switch to a weapon system. So everything we do through the CTAC lens, we want to consider the weapon system and the fact that I would like to move the weapon system farther away from my opponent. I would also like to get into a position where I can deliver structural damage. To me, there's a difference between superficial damage, which could be a torn ligament, or structural damage, which would be breaking someone's foot off. Additionally, I would like to move myself into a position so I can be getting up from the ground. And also I want to be in a position where I can have good optics. Not all martial arts trains intelligent optics, the ability to make it a habit to see a second or third opponent. So we want to have options that will move us into a position so we'll be able to survey the surroundings and be aware of what's going on around us. Also, I want to be able to move into a position where I can deliver destructive force if I have to. I can deliver it to the opponent, and if I am free to move, I have an option to deal with second or third opponents if something like that comes up. So first, we're going to take a look at some common escapes from this position. So for those that are not familiar with grappling, we call this the escape side and go to guard. So one of the things they're doing is they're going to do a bridge in order to create space. This is a very common thing needed in grappling, space, which leads to movement, which generally leads to some type of frame. So they bridge, they create space, they're going to move their hips out to create that space, and then they're going to insert a frame. What you see here is they're inserting the lower shin next to the hip. And I'm doing this because they're still trying to get into a dominant position. They're trying to smash me. They're trying to stay in that side control position. So I create a frame in order to maintain the space that I've created so that I can move and hopefully get into a more superior position, which is what we're going to here. I'd like to make it into the guard position. So the first thing we're taking a look at is a escape side and go to guard. This is a very common escape in Jiu Jitsu. I've seen it taught very commonly in multiple different grappling systems. Our goal is to get an upgrade in position. I'd like to get her in my guard so I can use more of my tools against her, more of my stronger tools against her. So the only drawback is it places me in a position where the weapon system, if I have it on, is very accessible. I'm literally serving it up. This position in CTAC has become nicknamed the dinner table, and if they're in a fighting mindset and they want to attack me in that moment, we nickname it the operating table. Okay, so we took a look at a common option, which is escape side and go to guard. Great in grappling, but when I put the kit on, and when I considered ground fighting, I had a little more to deal with. I pretty much served up the weapon system for my partner, made it very accessible for them. I literally bring it in front of them for them to get to it. Also, if they're not in the grappling mindset and they're switching into more fighting, I'm pretty much putting myself in front of all of their weapon systems so they can access me very easily. One of the things that we saw Jen do, we call a pin and pull, and it comes from me trying to put in a frame, which is a common thing in grappling. I tried to frame up, make distance with my leg. She pinned it to the ground and pulled up on the toe, hopefully doing some severe damage. But the point is, that is a common thing in grappling systems, is having to create frames. So in a more ground fighting or anti-grappling mindset, I'm actually giving her what she needs to do structural damage to my body. So one other option that you're seeing here is someone that is not in a grappling mindset. They're going to switch gears and they're going to fight. And that is another drawback to the position, is I am placing myself, if I stay there, in a position where I am right in front of all of their weapon systems. All right, guys, if you like the material that you're seeing, this all comes from the CTAC program. We have an online video archive of this information. We've been getting a lot of requests for it. You can find the link to that archive in the description. Okay, so the next technique we're going to look at is one I commonly use both in grappling and weapon-based grappling and more fight-based grappling. And what led me to this technique is I travel and I teach a lot of law enforcement. In this particular instance, I was working with a military team, and they had brought me in to teach defensive tactics for 2 days. And then one of the parts of the agreement is I get to stay and play on the range afterwards. And so we are finished training the DT, and we're moving into the range and into the shoot house, and I was unaware that it was time for payback. These guys were planning on getting me in the shoot house, and they did. And you know, it's a very chaotic, you've got gear on, you've got the red man suits, and you are going at it. So I ended up in a hallway with 2 of these guys, and one of them rammed into me, bounced me off the wall, and I hit the floor, and he came down on top of me. And I did automatically what I had been training to do for years, which is I started to escape side control and go to the guard position. And the second I slid in front of him, 2 things happened. One, he grabbed my weapon system, got it online, and we were using Sims. He started letting me know he had it. And his buddy, who had came around him at that time, started booting me in the head. And so at that point, I realized that it was time to make an adjustment when considering weapon systems and more fighting-based mindset and a second opponent. One thing I noticed during this exchange was that I didn't even think about doing that technique. It just naturally came out of my body. It naturally came out of my nervous system. And one of the reasons is because I had spent years doing this thousands of times. I was under a tremendous amount of stress. I was thinking with the puppy dog brain, and it took over and it did what it was trained to do. And that's when I realized I wanted to start changing the technique that I used in my everyday grappling. And I wanted to put something together that also took into consideration weapon systems, getting to the person's lower legs, because if you can destroy the lower legs, it's usually a good day for you. I also wanted to have the option of exiting the situation. Because of the second opponent, I wanted to be leaving the ground so that I could see if someone else was coming and respond appropriately if they were. Okay, so this next move got the nickname of the Backdoor Escape. So what you're going to be seeing here is we're starting out with the same concept we did when we're going to guard. We're bridging the hips in order to create space. Very common thing needed in grappling. Now, but instead of sliding the shin in across the front of my opponent, which gives it to them if they are looking for that option, I'm instead going to do a downward shrimp, and I want to move around them toward the feet, almost like I'm trying to go behind them. Now, commonly when I do this, they're going to follow me because they want to re-engage and reestablish a dominant position. So you'll see one of the things that I do is I will use a yokan in the armpit. So I'll do the bridge, put the yokan, and then I'll start moving behind them. If they try to turn into me, they run into the yokan. And then I'm going to start disengaging from the floor. I want to start getting up. I will commonly say in grappling classes that are related to ground fighting or weaponry-based in exchanges that they have to earn grappling. Otherwise, I'm exiting the situation. Moving into this position also gives me access to the feet because I'd like to do to them exactly what Jen did to me earlier. I'd like to do the pin and pull. I'd like to pin that lower leg down, grab that toe, and break their foot off if it is all possible. This also puts me in a position where my head is up and I can have good optics. I want to train myself to look around. This is very similar to what you see individuals on the range do. Once they work their drill on the target, they will commonly run through a practice of looking left, looking right. They train to look and see. Trained to have good optics under pressure. Well, I want to be able to do the same thing, and this position puts me in that. I'm leaving the floor, I'm coming up into a kneeling position, and I'm able to survey the room and see what I have. This also puts me in a position that I can access one of my weapon systems. And I very commonly will carry a fixed blade knife, and I carry a firearm in the appendix position. And I have the ability, once I exit and go to a good angle, to access either one of them and put them online if it calls for it. Obviously, you have to take into consideration the legalities here, but you have the option if you need it. At this point, I could choose to re-engage with striking I could re-engage with grappling if I wanted to, or I can stand up and just exit. Start making space, get a superior angle, which if I'm able to create space and get a good angle, and I have to go to the weapon system when I'm on my feet, I have that option. It also puts you in a good position to look and see what is going on in the environment. Sometimes when you're tied up on the ground, even a little bit, and you're concerned with an opponent, you don't have the skill set or you don't have the nervous habit to look. And we want to train that into all of our techniques if we can. So one of the first moves is a very common move from grappling, which is a bridge. This is used to make space. You know, I would like to use a powerful move of the hips to get the person off of me so I have enough space to move. But you don't always need it. When we plug this into a class where we put the gloves on and my opponent can strike me, more of a vale tudo environment, a lot of times they will raise up off of me to strike me. They make space in order to be able to put that ballistic force in my direction. So at that moment, I just have to recognize that that would be the time to do the move. All right, so today we took a look at a escape from a side control position, from a common grappling position. And we looked at a very common technique that I was taught years ago, I still teach in Jiu Jitsu, several other systems. But we also want to look at it through the perspective of the CTAC system. And in that system, we wear weaponry all the time. So if I have it on and I do this escape that you saw today, it actually kind of brings the weapon system to the opponent. Now I can still defend it and I could still try to go for theirs, but overall I am bringing it in front of them and in front of their tools. So what I want to do, and what we did, is we want to choose something that does the opposite of that. I want to take it away from them. And that's one of the reasons we started using the backdoor escape. Is because immediately after I bridge, I can control the arm and I can start to go around them and behind them as much as possible, removing the weapon system from their tools. It also gives me an option to start exiting and getting up on my knees, or which can lead to getting up on my feet. Now I like to attack the feet in a anti-grappling, grappling, ground fighting situation. So there's the benefit that I can capture a foot as I'm exiting and do some damage to the foot on the way out. It also puts me in a position where my head is up. As I mentioned in the story I was talking about, being able to see a second opponent or a third opponent that may be part of the situation is important. So it puts me in a position to have good optics. And also I have the option to go to a weapon system if it calls for it. Or you can just get up and exit the situation. We arrive to a lot of this through the lens of self-defense. So it's not the more traditional answer, but that's one of the things we try to do with the system, is put it through filters and look for options that answers those questions that we need, considering that we carry, considering that there's a second opponent. All right, guys, if you like what you're seeing, give us a like and a subscribe so that when we release videos in the future, you will get a notification. Also, if you know friends that would benefit from this, please give us a share. This is some of the funniest stuff happened in the truck, going to and leaving the academy.
My God, do you not see the flashing lights? Like, where's that guy? Just go on through the intersection.
We don't even know what the flashing lights mean.
I can't hear anything either.
They don't teach that in school anymore, you know?